I applaud you for coming today on this Good Friday to the services, since it's not a Mass. It's a day of prayer, fasting, and abstinence. To the extent possible, too, we Christians are urged to keep today free of work, which is good. Some of you might have already done that, which is good. And even social engagements and extra entertainments, amusements, devoting ourselves more to common prayer and worship, the Stations of the Cross. And we also pray for the needs of the world, which are many. Good Friday is the day where we're invited into the unpleasant place, to the thicket of the trials and pains of the Son of God. This is not with mere thoughts of the mind, but also of the will, our hearts, where we accept suffering very concretely in our lives, symbolized and in a small way by the fasting and prayer and abstinence that we live today, a small bit of suffering offered to our Lord. As we seek to unify ourselves to the crucified Christ, we will understand suffering better with Him. We begin to grasp anew His real love for us in this, because we all suffer. But when we suffer, how do we respond? Do we look at Jesus in those moments when we are suffering? St. John of the Cross says the purest sufferings brings with them the most intimate and purest understanding. The Imitation of Christ finishes the thought saying, "No one feels more deeply in his heart the passion of Christ than the one who has suffered something similar." We have this in the saints. I want to highlight St. Perpetua and Felicity briefly here. St. Perpetua, she was the daughter of a Roman senator, governor also of Carthage, and her slave, whose name was Felicity, or Felicitas in Latin, which means happiness. They were asked to deny their faith and show allegiance to Rome and the Roman gods. And they would not reject their faith in Jesus in even small ways. Felicity was pregnant at the time. She was placed in a prison, and she started to moan and complain for more water, for more fresh air. And one of the guards responded to her and said, "If you can't handle this in the prison, how will you survive the wild animals who will rip you to shreds, which is your sentence, in a few days?" And she said back, "Mark my words." She was a feisty young woman. These sufferings now, it's Felicity bearing them, and she's not bearing them very well, she said. But in the arena, it will not be Felicity. It will be Jesus Christ who will bear that suffering, and I will die with the joy of being united to Christ. Mark my words. And indeed, she and Perpetua both were killed in the arena with great courage and devotedness in their faith to Jesus. And they were serene. The martyrs have that sereneness, that peace, as they go to their death, because they have been looking at Jesus their whole life, and they were ready. You and I try to build up that momentum of loving Jesus and looking upon Jesus, and that'll be the focus, looking upon Jesus. If we look too much on ourselves or on our particular sufferings, we'll get lost very quickly, and we'll start grudges and anger, and it'll start moving. But let's look at Jesus when we suffer personal insult. Forgive those injuries. We can do that. The power and the grace of Jesus. But I need to look at Jesus first. His first words also as he hung upon the cross was, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." In the same moment, those nails were piercing his main nerves in his wrists and feet. The pain of thirst, the humiliation. Where are all my followers? And this is the reward of doing deeds of love and speaking the truth. And also that natural depression that comes also when pains happen to one. Forgive them, Lord, he says, for they know not what they do. every slight that we receive, the showing of our weakness when people see it. He allowed himself these and more. He didn't defend himself. He didn't respond to the insults. Our pains and our injuries, we must connect that and those to him and find union with him. And you surely will. There's an intimacy that happens with Jesus in those moments. And they are beautiful moments. When we have anxiety, look at Jesus. When doing God's will, especially when it's difficult, look at Jesus. When we are tired and exhausted, look at Jesus. When we feel underappreciated, slandered even, look at Jesus. When you feel lonely, look at Jesus. And we close this homily by looking at the mother of Jesus as well, glancing at her. We can also hold her hand, and we can stay with Jesus in his sufferings as he endures them and redeems them to be the instrument of our salvation.